Here we're going to tie the Charlie Boy hopper. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some 2mm foam. I'm going to cut a strip that's just a hair wider than the distance from the shank of the hook to the point of the hook. Then I'm going to take my hook off of the vise, and then I'm going to pierce the middle of the foam with that hook. And I'm just going to let it hang off the back for now. First thing that we're going to do is we're just going to take our thread and we're going to start it here at the back. I'm going to take it forward. It doesn't have to be pretty. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of foam. You can use whatever you have laying around. We're going to tie some foam in about 2 lengths away from the eye of the hook. This foam is just going to be a binder foam. It's going to help the glue stick. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my foam, I'm going to pull it along the underside of the hook, and I'm going to straighten it out, and I'm going to poke a hole through the foam, right in the middle of the foam, right where the eye is, just like so. Then I'll just kind of fold it back behind here just to kind of eye it all up. Now the next step is to take a little bit of Zap-A-Gap. You got to be very careful not to overdo it with any glue that you're going to use. I like to use the brush-on kind. It makes it a little easier to apply, and I can also control the amount that I'm applying a little easier. And we're going to add just a little bit of glue to the shank here where the foam is, about the equivalent to maybe a drop or so if you're using a standard dropper. And I'm going to put a little bit on the underside as well here. I definitely don't want any standing glue or any big drops. I just want enough to kind of coat everything here. Once I've done that, I'm going to take this piece of foam, I'm going to fold it back, trying to center it as much as I can, and I'm going to squeeze together. Squeeze the whole thing together here. I want the back to kind of taper up just a hair, just like you see. And what you end up with is a nice flat piece of foam. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our thread, we're going to do a loose wrap over the back and then tighten down. This will be the first segment, and I'll just gradually tighten. There we go. I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to angle it forward just like so. You can see I made half of an X, and then I'm going to do a wrap around the body. I'm going to do that same thing. Then I do it again. Do that as many times as you need to do to get to the front of the hook. Usually it takes 3 to 4 times depending on the size that you're going to tie. It took me 3 times there, so I have 4 segments, including the head. Now the next thing to do is trim the back, and I do that by taking a razor blade and just laying it flat on the body, and then I'm just going to take it and go backwards with it. Just like so. Now what you can do is trim the tail to a bit of a taper here. I usually like to kind of angle it in a little bit. kind of like that. Now the next thing to do is to tie in the legs. For this I'm just going to use some brown round rubber legs, and I'm going to tie these in right on the side of the hook, right in between the two pieces of foam. I do a set on each side here. Once you have those tied in, I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to jump to the back and create an X. I'm going to secure down the back leg. And you can do this with one wrap or you can do it with two. I'm going to try to do it here with one. There we go. And you're going to take your thread back up to the front portion. Now we're going to trim these back legs a little bit longer than our front legs. We're going to trim them just past the body portion. And then we're going to trim the front legs here about half of the length of the back legs. Now we're going to tie in our over wing. For this I'm going to use a piece of tan web wing, and I measure it out so it's just a hair longer than the tail. And I'm just going to trim out the excess here and do a nice loose wrap over the web wing, cinch it down into place. Now we're ready for the over wing. For that I'm going to use a chunk of deer hair, about 3/4 of the diameter of a pencil or so, depending on the size that you're going to tie here. And I'm going to put it in a stacker to even up all the tips of the deer hair. Once I have the tips nice and even, I can take it out of the stacker here. We also want this wing to be about the length of the body. So just measure it out, and then I'm going to trim the ends here so that they're just a hair longer than where I'm going to tie them in at. And I'm just going to do a nice loose wrap and flare that deer hair up. Now, once I've done that, I'm going to take a whip finisher. Helps to use a nice large whip finisher for this portion. I'm going to whip finish. Tug it down nice and tight. You could trim the excess out of there. And of course you can glue it to finish it. That's all there is to a Charlie Boy hopper. It's a fairly easy hopper to tie, invented by Mr. Charlie Craven. Probably one of my favorite hoppers to fish. Very effective, very simple. And if you want, he likes to add eyes to the hopper, and you can do that with just a Sharpie. It's not a necessary step by any means, but if it makes you feel better, you can add eyes. That's all there is to a Charlie Boy hopper.